All right, welcome to the Spectrum Professional Development Series. Our October event is applying to grad school, and we have a panel of 4 George Mason physics and astronomy grad students who are available to answer some questions. Before we get started with the panel, we're just gonna cover the basics of what is in a grad school application and the different tracks that you can go for grad school. So the basic application requirements are very similar to the undergrad requirements. You have a personal statement, you need some letters of recommendation, you will need your college transcript, and now that you're in a higher education position, you probably should also have a resume or CV ready to go. Another thing that was pretty common a few years ago, but post-COVID has kind of been phased out at a lot of schools, are the GRE scores. There are various GRE scores, kind of like the SAT subject tests. There is a GRE physics test. Previous requirements for most grad schools was the physics GRE subject test, as well as just the generic GRE exam. Again, kind of being phased out, but any school that you're applying to, just definitely check if the requirements are still there. And then sort of similar to undergrad applications, some schools might have individualized questions that they want you to answer. They're usually short form, not as long as the personal statement. So there are 2 different tracks that you can go for graduate school. There's the master's program and the PhD program. Master's program is typically shorter, only about 1 to 2 years, and you pretty much are taking only classes. You might do a little bit of research and work with an advisor, but it is not the depth that you would for a PhD. And some programs, you will also have a master's thesis project or a capstone project. Again, similar in idea to a dissertation, but it's not the same scale as a PhD dissertation. And for a master's program, depending on the school you go to, and if you were able to work it out with your department, for you to be a TA or an RA, you might be able to have tuition covered, but it's not a guarantee. And most people go on the master's track because it is an opportunity for them to get career advancement with specialization for industry specific jobs. So engineers, for example, or like pharmacy techs. So that's the main reason people go to master's programs. Once you do a master's, you do have the option to keep going with a PhD. So a PhD program is usually a little bit longer. The average in America is currently 6 years and some change, but it varies from person to person. And the PhD program consists of taking classes and then also doing research, like original research that goes in depth, and you usually will publish a couple papers. And then with the PhD program, you will probably and most likely have your tuition covered, and you will be given a stipend as a salary. But that also means that you are working for the department, whether as a teaching assistant or a research assistant. So there is, it is, while you're still in school, it is still kind of like a 9-to-5 job that you have to balance. And the main goal for people pursuing a PhD are to make contributions to their field of interest and to prepare them for a career in academia or advanced research settings. So there are plenty of other questions that I'm sure can arise from this 2 little slide information. So we will invite the panel up now. So we have Lucy and Matt and Aidan and Joe. And then if you could each just give a short little introduction, you don't have to go in depth, just
We'll stop the sharing screen so that you show up on the recording that we're doing, and we can start with Lucy on the left with a short 1-minute introduction. And then you can pass the microphone down. That's the microphone you'll use anytime anyone's answering a question.
Fantastic. So hi, I'm Lucy. I use she, they pronouns. I'm a third-year graduate student here in this astronomy department. I don't know if there's anything else to just that, so I'm just gonna pass it on.
Hello, I'm Matt, him pronouns. I'm a 4th-year PhD student in the physics program.
Hi, I'm Aidan, him pronouns. I'm a 2nd-year PhD student in the physics department.
I'm also Joe, Joe, I'm also second. I'm also second year, PhD student, so.
Great. So we'll start with audience questions. Do we have any questions from the audience so far? And if not, we have some preset questions on each part of the application process and life as a grad student that we can get into. Okay,
How much do master's courses typically cost? Like, is it standard or?
Well, it will definitely depend on your school. Here at George Mason, the graduate course costs are about twice, I think, what the undergraduate credits are. And so it's a substantial amount.
so starting with the application process. And if anybody wants to jump in, that's not for any specific people. When should someone start working on an application?
Yesterday.
Pretty common deadlines.
I'm gonna use the microphone. Oh.
If I remember correctly, April 15th is a pretty common deadline for a lot of application. Is that,
Oh,
No,
that's
Yeah.
decision day?
Earlier. December 15th.
Okay, so you need to start November.
Which of you started at the end of your junior year, beginning of senior year, and which of you started thinking about grad school a little bit earlier?
I started in my junior weeks in college. I know some of us up here didn't go straight from undergrad to grad school, so if anyone else wants to talk about that.
I have a story. So I'm a non-traditional, so I can't really talk about junior, senior, but back in fall 21. I had been planning to graduate fall 22. But I had a meeting with my academic advisor, I think in October, just talking about. This was when I was working on a bachelor's in astronomy. Yeah. Here at George Mason. So I was meeting with my academic advisor sometime in October, just talking about classes, when he realized I would actually be able to graduate in the spring 21, if we adjusted some things, or 22, sorry. And I was like, oh, great, so I can finish my degree earlier and get back to the PhD program. But I hadn't started any graduate application process whatsoever. So that was a startling moment, and I can tell you that having 2 months to do this process was an awful experience.
Yeah, I definitely suggest at least having a list or idea of what schools you want to apply and what the requirements are before you start your fall semester, when you're applying. Because that helps you know how many references you need. You can ask people for references. You can start getting things sorted If you need to take any tests, take any tests. I am a procrastinator and there were a few schools on my list that had December 1st deadlines that I simply did not apply to because I was like, it's not gonna get done. So if you want, especially some schools do have those November deadlines. Make sure you know when those deadlines are, make sure you know what the requirements are, that we can get yourself sorted and come up with a game plan.
When would, in the process of applying, when did you ask, the people who wrote the letters of recommendation for you? And when do you suggest those should be?
So there's a bunch of things about this too. Yeah, so you are relying on other people along with yourself to do this, so the more time you get, the better. You should be thinking about it at least a month and a half in advance to the due date. Just because different people like to write letters in different ways. I had some that would knock it out a day or two after I asked. One of my professors wrote a draft of the letter and wouldn't submit it till the day before. She wanted a month to think about it. So it really depends on who you're asking. And along with that, finding a good letter of rec takes time. So you can get that from more than just your undergrad or your job. Also get it from grad school you're applying to make a connection. It's time to foster that relationship.
So was there anyone on the, sorry, did you have something to say about letters of rec?
Yeah, a little bit, but also the previous question of when to start applying. If you're a junior watching this, I think you should start thinking about applications. Because, going with letters of rec, you're going to want to ask people that you have a good relationship with. And so you want to make sure you develop those relationships that you haven't already. So like getting to know some of your professors and such.
Okay, Joe, I'm gonna call you out a little bit. So you worked in industry before you came to grad school. So what was your application process like? And like the timeline, who you asked to write letters of recommendation?
So that was definitely kind of a unique situation. I was working in engineering for a little while, and then I had decided that I wanted to go back into physics. So for me, the process began with one of the slides that we had up earlier about master's versus PhD. At first, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to stay in industry and pursue a master's while continuing to work in industry, which, going back to the earlier question, that is also an option, a different route, but an option. When I finally decided that I wanted to go for the PhD, I first began by just doing a search of all the different grad schools that I might want to apply to and creating a list of like criteria that I wanted them to be. So for me, it was really important that I was in certain parts of the country, or that I would have opportunity to work in an R1 lab. That was also important to me. So there's like criteria that I used to select which schools that I wanted to apply to. And I chose at some point that I was going to narrow it down to 5. And that ended up being the number of schools that I applied to. So it began quite a ways out from any deadlines as just kind of a realization that I do want to pursue a PhD. Now I have to start thinking about what applications I'm going to fill out. And there's also the issue of what's the test? The GRE, yes, the GRE. So there's also that. I needed to get that out of the way. And I needed to have enough time to get that out of the way for the schools that had earlier deadlines and also required GRE. So starting early is definitely great advice. Was there anything other?
Just one other thing that Joe kind of alluded to, and I was thinking of. The more schools you apply to, the more time you should give yourself. It's kind of a, I don't know, not discussed thing, but when you're doing grad school applications, it's not like undergrad. You can't do like a common app and apply to everybody the same. You're gonna have to make personalized applications. So do that.
I had a friend in undergrad who was very ambitious and applied to 16 grad schools. They did not get into any of them. So take that as you will.
So while we're on this subject, Joe already covered this, but for the other three of you, how many schools did you apply to and what did you look for when you were applying? Like, how did you choose what was a good school for you?
I applied to a total of 6 schools. I had 8 on my list, but as I mentioned, some of them I didn't apply to because I didn't have my act together and I wasn't gonna send in a partial application. All of my schools did not require the GRE because I did not want to take that. They were all in places that I thought I would be happy living for 5+ years. And they all had research that I was interested in. I do solar physics. There's a great solar physics group that they compiled a list of like a bunch of grad schools that have good solar physics programs. So that was something that I looked at. So yeah, research interest, location, and then I didn't want to do tests.
Yeah, mine's very similar to that, because, especially because I was on this accelerated, application process, so anybody requiring the GRE out. Kind of early deadlines also out. Places that I want to live, absolutely. And then I also do solar physics from a different perspective. So I was looking for schools that had solar physics programs, and then I was looking at schools that had dedicated astrophysics programs. So like here at George Mason, we just have a general physics program. So mostly when I was applying to other schools, I was like, do they have dedicated astrophysics program?
Yeah, so, I applied a little more, I applied to 10. Yeah, and then my criteria, because I was coming out of undergrad, I wasn't entirely sure what specific research I wanted to do. I had a general idea that I wanted to do something quantum based. So, I looked at programs for a theoretical component and experimental components. Wasn't sure which track I wanted to go down. And, I looked for a couple backup schools. I worked with a professor that was really big into physics education and a lot of tutoring. So I looked at potentially schools for that, which I'm interested in. So I narrowed down all of that, location, cost of living, look at the average stipend amount that grad students get, saw it was doable. I narrowed down my choices pretty easily.
Just kind of going off the number of schools you should apply to, I think the wisdom in physics and astronomy, I always heard between 8 and 10. I only applied to 6, but I had a very good feeling I was going to get into one of them. So it was a small school that I had done research with some of the professors before, which is why I did that. But in general, 8 to 10 is what's considered the ballpark what you should be applying to.
I also applied to 10 or 11, I'm not quite sure I remember. I think, yeah, there's a few things going on with this. One is graduate school is competitive, it's just getting more and more competitive. So you don't really have a thing like a safe school. So on that hand, you kind of want to apply to more schools. On the other hand, applications can be quite expensive. I think I've spent in total about $1,000 on my applications, and they're just so much work. You're not going to be able to write just like one personal statement and give it to all of the schools. So you want to balance that.
What do you mean by you can't just write one personal statement and give it to all of them?
Yeah, so schools want to see writing from you that specify why you want to go to their school in particular. So if you write a single statement with a blank and just fill in that school on all of the blanks, if they actually read that, they're going to be like, oh, this is a general statement that was not specific to us. And then beyond personal statements, the schools might have 3-4 different essays that they.
So in regards to the, like the schools want to see, like that you are showing genuine interest in their school, what is the kind of stuff that would help in a personal statement?
since I have the mic, I'll follow that up. I have a specific example. So I was applying to schools with solar physics departments, and specifically space weather programs. It happens that Dupertuis has a pretty well-known space weather lab. So I remember at least once or twice when I was talking to people at different schools, they actually asked me, why would you want to come here if you're already at Dupertuis? So, yeah, they really want specific details of why we want this specific location. You want to be able to talk about that.
Kind of following that up, I know in my personal statement, I had like a bare bones personal statement, but yeah, I'm filling a lot of like more than just name details, like, oh, I would be interested in working with this professor. And in my personal statement, I included that I like doing outreach. And so for each school I applied to, I would look at what their outreach looks like and how I can get involved in that, and I would include a sentence or two about that. And schools seem to really like it, and all of my interviews that I had, they brought it up. So just show that you're interested, not just in like class, being a student, be like, hey, I'd be interested in doing this with this person, or I'd be interested in getting involved in this or that program. Because that shows that you actually do really want to go there, and they want students to go there.
So show that you've done your research.
Yeah.
To prove that.
It's literally
want
just like
research.
15-20 minutes going through the department webpage. It'll change your life.
Would you recommend, like emailing any of the professors?
I emailed some professors, iffy on them getting back. I don't know how much it helped me in the process. But that's just my personal experience. Then I only applied to 6 schools, and one of the schools I already like knew most of the people there. So I don't know if someone else wants to comment.
I emailed at least one person at every school that I thought about applying to. Maybe I got responses from half of them. I think probably because everybody was busy with the applications being right in the middle of that. But yeah, I think being able to identify professors whose research you're interested in, so that you can actually talk to them, is probably quite helpful. Because if it ends up they like you and they're like, I think we could have funding for you, I think that ends up making your chances better.
The one thing to consider with that too is that it takes time. Like, you're gonna be talking to, so having a developing relationship, depending on what the schools you're applying to. So aside from that, another thing you can do that I did is I read the papers. So if you comment on their papers and your statements, even if they don't have funding or they don't, see you as a potential student, it shows the initiative that they're looking for, and you're not relying on somebody's response. Well, that was a helpful piece of advice I got.
So other parts of the application, so we're all 3-dimensional humans. We're not just scientists. Was there anything else, like any extracurricular or volunteering that you did in undergrad or in the years before you started grad school and writing your application that you would say are beneficial?
So I'm gonna talk about this one first. So the piece of advice I got, which I think was actually kind of helpful, is yes, but make it relevant. So if you're doing just community service, it's great, but graduate schools are looking for they're looking through a competitive pool at people that they want to employees and representation. So it's less important than that. If you're doing like TAing the classes or running like their Society of Physics Students chapter, they care about that. So yes, but conditionally.
I think it also is like what you emphasize, so like, I was way too involved in undergrad, I definitely burnt myself out. But I did volunteering at the University Observatory, so I included that in my like personal statement, my research statement. But in terms of like the other community stuff I didn't necessarily put it in my personal statement or research statement. That's like the fun of what I want to show them, but I would include, for example, I did a social sciences research project in my undergrad, which wasn't relevant to physics, but I included it in my CV. And in a lot of my interviews and my discussions, I brought it up because it's a student-led research project, and it showed that I can take the initiative and write a thesis without having someone having to hold my hand the whole time. So as long as you can connect things that aren't relevant, they don't seem relevant to how they would help you in those moments, it does help you seem more rounded. Don't include everything you've ever done in your entire life on your CV or your personal statement. Nobody wants to read that, all due respect, but you can use those experiences in your interviews or when you're even just talking to professors to show that you are a person, that you have had leadership roles or whatever.
How many of you, sorry, maybe Matt, if you could also answer this, but how many of you did like research in your undergrad time?
Yeah, so going off the last question, I had a bit of a twisty road to the PhD program. So things that I could talk about in my personal statement, but I actually got a master's degree a while ago. So that's useful talking about, hey, I had graduate experience and I did pretty well with that. So I could probably do that again. And then outside of academia, I spent a few years as a teacher. And so that's something I can talk about because probably at some point in a grad student's career, they're going to want some teaching experience, well, they will do some teaching. And so if you have that experience already, that would work good. And it doesn't have to be like formal, I was at a public school being a teacher. If there was a tutoring center or just kind of one-on-one tutoring, I think that's a kind of helpful thing.
Yeah, probably the two best things that I had on my CV that helped me get attention on the application and in interviews was the experience of being an employee. So you can talk about that if that's something you've done. Having experience in the work environment is really important. And it's also important to like show that you can function in your job, like with people, rather than just like, you know, I can check all the boxes for all the classes and stuff like that. Having the people skills developed is good, and that shows that. The other thing that really helped me was the research that I was a part of. In undergrad, I helped lead it was a professor guided research that was in physics directed. So I helped lead that and was kind of in charge of a lot of moving parts. And that was one that came up many times in interviews and in different email correspondence I had with people during the application process. They wanted to know, like, what were you responsible for? You know, how did you, how did you overcome these challenges? Things along that nature. So getting, I guess the point of what I'm trying to say is that experience is kind of the biggest thing, at least from what I've seen. Experience is what will get you the most attention because that demonstrates that you are capable of having done something. So if you have an opportunity to get involved in research in any way, lead research even better, or go work in industry for a while if that's the right one to take. All of those are excellent options and something that will help you.
And I'll also add that if you haven't done research, it's not necessarily a deal breaker. It is kind of hard, but you can, I'm assuming you took in lab classes, you can definitely connect those to research experience. I know in my undergrad, I took an observational astronomy course, which was basically like a mini research project for the whole semester. So it's not that you're doomed if you haven't done research, it just means you're gonna have to do a little extra work to show that you are capable of doing research.
To kind of touch on that too. You don't have to limit it to either physics specific research or even academic research. You can do things on your own. There's a wide variety of topics you can explore. Like math has a bunch of unsolved problems that you can just work on. And you don't need somebody there to, guide you through it. Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Like you don't have to get paid to do like a research program. If you want just for graduate school experience or your applications, you can just say like, I worked on this. This is where I wanted to take it. Here's the struggles I found. That's really what they're looking for. They're looking for the process and from it. They know you're not going to do some stellar amount of work in the field at an undergrad level.
That brings up something I forgot about that I think is kind of fun. There was one year that I had an internship, like sophomore, junior year, and then COVID happened and that got taken away. So I was like, I have a free summer now. I don't know what to do with it. I ended up just doing my own research into rocket propellants, and I spent the whole summer making rocket fuel and shooting out rockets. And that actually came up during one of my interviews and for grad. I totally forgot that happened. That was the thing.
So you're all in grad school now and you went through the process of applying. Is there anything that you wish you knew when applying for grad school or choosing grad school, or not any regrets, but like if you could redo it, like would you have made your process of applying any different?
Know what you're talking about. Like, I know I said earlier, like I read papers. I also did not understand what I was reading. And like to a certain degree, that's expected. But if you're gonna talk about something, know what you're talking about, because there was quite a few things that I tried to BS and that does not apply. So, yeah.
A very specific detail about applications. The requirements for an application on a school's webpage is often very different from the requirements once you get into the application like program. The website might be like, oh, you need a personal statement and a research statement. And then you go into the application, it's like, whoa, personal statement, diversity statement, extra things plus your research statement. And so if you time it based off of those webpage details, you get into the application, it's like, oh, this is a lot more work than I was expecting.
I guess I have something like that. I did a lot of research into the schools that I wanted to get into, but I didn't do a lot of research into each individual school's program format. Like what is actually required in each school to get a PhD. Now, I mean, it may be kind of a waste of time to go into the incredible detail trying to figure all of it out because it can be fairly complicated. But it would be a good idea to understand, does the school have qualification exams? What do the qualification exams look like? How much time do I have to pass them? What kind of course load am I expected to take? Am I doing TA for a while and then RA, or am I going straight into RA? Like knowing whether you're doing teaching and research or what is going to be expected of you would probably be really helpful. If I could go back, I probably would have taken more time to not just pick out the schools I like and make sure that they meet the qualifications that I thought were good. Also look at what is the program actually expect from me once I'm in the program. That's just personal. I didn't do much research into that to show.
Were there any like misconceptions you had when like during your application process that when you got to grad school, you were like, oh, this is how it goes? Like not specifically about like strengthening your application, but just like grad school life in general. So I know I'm not on the panel, but one of the things that I wasn't super aware of was like each school has their own process, like Joe was saying, of like when you take classes and when you do quals and then when you do research. Like I was told by an undergrad professor, like grad school is you take classes, you have to pass exams, and then you can do research. But then I got to grad school and I was like, oh, I should be doing research like now.
That's a good thing, actually, to talk about. Because different schools have different formats for that. So I think it's probably true at most schools, yeah, you wanna get yourself into research as soon as possible. But some schools will help you do that more than others. I think here at George Mason, it's, you need to find your own research. But I know from the application that like University of Boulder, Colorado, who has an excellent astrophysics program, they specifically say we want you to spend like your first 2 or 3 years just exploring research topics before you choose one to do your dissertation on. So yeah, looking around, what are their specific details?
Yeah, another thing is certain schools have rotations where they force you to go through different labs. It depends on the program, depends on the school, so look into that, and, I had visions of those, but, you know, so.
Yeah, just kind of like these guys are saying, there was one school I got into where like when I did my visit day, it was like, this is the professor you're gonna be working with, this is the project. She like talked to me about the project it would be, it showed me where my desk would be, like it was very much like I knew exactly what I was going to be doing from day one. And some of the other schools I went to, it was more like, we encourage you to work with different professors. In fact, we recommend you do that. You don't keep going with your first professor. And that's why I think like once you get in, it's important to try to make those visit days if you can, because like something might look good on paper and then when you get there, you're like, oh, I actually hate this. I know the school that was like top of my list, it had been top of my list for like 2 years. I got in, I visited there and I said, I do not want to live in the middle of nowhere, New Hampshire. I did not realize that until I got there. So if you can do those visit days, they're paid for usually. Highly recommend doing them because vibes are important.
Actually, remember the thing I forgot,
You're welcome.
so isn't like a regret thing, but I just, you know what, well, find out the student body that's there. Like, it's really important, the fact that you're gonna be taking classes with these people, you're gonna be talking to these people. If you're doing an entire graduate school career on your own, it's not gonna go well. So find out the people you're gonna be working with and talking to and see if you like that environment, because if not, just might not be a good fit on that aspect too. It's just as much about the people you're around as it is content that you're on. Okay.
Yeah, I totally agree with the both of you that the visit day is like monumentally important, and that actually ended up being the deciding factor for why I came here. I had gone on another visit day to an unnamed school somewhere else and was rather unimpressed, even though it was one of like my top picks. I thought I was gonna go there, you know, seemed great. And then I went on that visit day and did not, they weren't prepared for me. They didn't, some of the professors I was supposed to see didn't even know I was there until that day. So it's just like they had no preparation. The students there didn't have any, you know, real plan. I was kind of on my own for most of it, so I had to like find buildings and stuff. So it was just like, if this is the level of preparation and time that they're giving me on a visit day, what can I expect, you know, in a graduate program? I came here and there was immediately a panel of grad students available to help guide me through what the day's gonna look like, a schedule. All the professors that I was talking to knew I was gonna be there and someone was walking me to the location. So everything was just planned to prepare for. And that was like, okay, if I come here, that's what I can expect from a grad program. Something where there's a plan and an effort and good people there. So that was a huge part of my decision.
So, kind of, jumping off of what you were saying, Joe, like you were kind of showing like what your day would look like. Maybe each of you could kind of just describe what your day-to-day schedule is, like weekly, like how much time do you spend doing research, how much time are you on campus, and time that you, just like personal time, like if you have any hobbies.
Go down the line. Sure.
So there's multiple parts to that. There's
You don't have to answer all of it,
okay,
just like, what's your,
What's it like to be in that?
well, yeah, so I guess this probably applies to everything that we've talked about before, but having a work-life balance in all things is extraordinarily important. So talking about the hobbies and stuff, even when you're doing grad school applications and stuff, it's better to apply to more, and it's better to do more research into every single school you're applying to. Don't overwork yourself, like prioritize staying healthy and stuff, so make sure that during the application process, and then afterwards, when you get into a grad school, that you're not just, nose to the grindstone the whole time. You gotta take a break and relax, find things you enjoy and stuff you look forward to when you get home for the day. Just take your mind off. So really you gotta find what works for you for that. But then as far as like what my life looks like in grad school specifically, I work in experimental physics with 2D devices, so a lot of my time is fabrication. It's literally building nanoscale devices to measure quantum effects. That takes a lot of time and a lot of concentration and effort. So I spend most of my time in lab, physically trying to build little devices, and I fill my week doing that. When I'm not doing that, I'm going to class or I'm doing homework for classes until I go home. So it's mostly in lab and person work with me. But it's different for everyone. Some people are computational, theoretical, so that's just fine.
Yeah, work-life balance as well said, but stress that. I'm also an experimentalist in 2D materials. I do the measurement side. So, I'm in lab, I'm on campus about the same as like, it would be like a 9 to 5 kind of thing. But I'm in lab less because I have tests running, so I can do that remotely. So similar thing, but I get to do a little bit more of the reading without having to do it at home. Similar thing though, with not in lab, classes, homework, and trying to keep that work-life balance on. It's very similar schedule.
what do you do, like, what do you do, like, when you're not doing anything grad school related?
Oh,
Like, how do you keep yourself balanced?
I don't know. I just kind of do a bunch of random stuff.
Practice what you preach, bro.
Yeah, I know. Man, I didn't achieve it. I don't know. I wish I had a better answer. I just gotta.
Don't mind.
Yeah, you have actually good answers to this question.
I like the outdoors. I go hiking most weekends. I haven't been as good about it in the last few months as I usually am, but I'm always hiking, fishing. I'm trying to get back into hunting. I'm trying to get more involved. There's a lot of different things, but mostly it's a lot of outdoor stuff. So I go down to Charlottesville and go out to Shenandoah a lot. And that was a big part of why I actually chose this school too. In the selection of grad schools, I was making sure there's somewhere I can be outdoors and do outdoor stuff. And this is one of those places. So having that in mind even before application.
I don't know about that. So one thing, especially when I was taking classes, I would choose a day of the week, typically like Saturday, and say, I'm not doing anything school related on this day. I'm gonna force myself to do that. And also, let's say you're in a class, you're working on a homework assignment, and you're just busting your head on it for day after day after day. It's okay to sometimes say, I'm gonna take the L on this one and just step away from it. I would say actually it will be necessary sometimes to do that. Mental health is infamously a problem in grad school, so make sure you're taking care of yourself. And that's even aside from work-life balance, just give your time to rest. Personally, I do a lot of rock climbing, so I would make sure that multiple times a week I'm just getting to the gym. Exercise in general, I think is a good thing to do. Or just like on any given day, I'll say I'm done working for the day, and I might hop on Discord and talk to friends, just to get away from it.
And what kind of physicist are you? Are you in a lab like?
Oh, yeah, so. The work I do is, I would say everything I do is something I can do on my own computer. So I don't have to be in a lab anywhere. For the most part, I can do my work anywhere that I want. I try to do work here on campus 3 times a week, just so I can be in this environment. Other days I can go to a coffee shop, I can go to Panera. Mostly I just try to get myself out of my house, because I don't want my house to be my office.
Similar to Matt, I can do pretty much everything I do on my computer. I do a lot of data analysis. So try to come into campus about 3 times a week, just because I find working at home makes it way too tempting to take naps. And those naps can be long. In terms of like when I work, I am actually a night person, so my work hours are very shifted from what the normal work hours are. But it's about the equivalent of the standard 9 to 5, sometimes a little bit more. Right now I'm working on a paper, so it's a little bit more. But what helps me keep the work-life balance is having dedicated things that are not work, that are scheduled into my schedule, so I can't avoid them. So for example, I play ice hockey. When I have a game, I have a game. I can't work during that time. My teammates are counting on me. That's the 3 hours that I am off work. I am doing something that is enjoyable and fun and exercise. When I have like meetings with friends and stuff, I will put it into my calendar to hold myself accountable. So I'm not like, oh, I could be working on this though. No, having lunch with a friend, I'm having lunch with a friend. That's just happening. I'm gonna have plans. Yeah.
We have time for, I think, 2 more questions, so I think what would be good, first of all, checking back in on our audience, do we have any questions either on the application process or on life as a grad student? In the room and on Zoom. Okay, all of you are at different stages of the graduate program, so we have a couple 2nd years and a 3rd year, and then the 4th year above. Could each of you describe what your year this year consists of, and if that's normal for a person at your stage? So what classes do you have left? How many papers do you have / are working on? What do you have left until you graduate?
Sure, so I'm actually not taking any regular classes this semester, which is. It's just because the classes that were offered by the classes that are already taking our classes that straight up were not relevant to me at all. I think most 3rd years sometimes we take classes. Oh, I need to be louder. So, and then I am a GRA, which I feel like 3rd years are typically starting to get into the GRA sort of area. What else?
You pass all your calls?
I have passed all my quals. And so up next is forming my committee and doing the thesis defense. Thesis proposal defense, not the thesis defense.
And you're working on your first paper.
And I'm working on my first paper. It should be hopefully going for submission within the next week. Otherwise, my advisors will be mad at me.
So I'm a 4th year, and I've completed all of my classes, all of my qualifying exams. I'm writing my dissertation proposal right now, and defending it 2 weeks from today. Exactly. I think that's pretty normal for a 4th year. I recently, my first paper was accepted for publication, which I actually have no idea when most people get their first. But so as a GRA, I'm 100% research. I'm gonna have a very busy 12 months from now, since I want to finish up next fall, where I will genuinely be on the grindstone all of the time to get a couple more meetings done.
This experiment side of this moves a little bit slower, so timelines are a little bit different. I'm second year still in classes, and half my fall's done, but I'm taking one class this semester. And then 2 next semester. I'll probably have to take a couple classes next fall, and then I'll be done. And I think that's kind of average. As far as publications, for the experimental side, it takes a little bit longer to get used to techniques, and, you know, it starts off with a lot of collaboration, so working on papers, but none of them will be like resolved on. So probably got another 3, 4, 5 years. I think that's kind of what I'm in a pretty similar place in some aspects, but I have no papers currently, and I'm working on work that should be in papers, so I'll at least be mentioned. Hopefully I'll be starting work on my own paper within. That's the goal, but I have to make the work in 5 source. See, I've passed 3 of the 4 falls, and I think I hope people only have to take classes this spring semester, and I might be able to be done with classes after that. Maybe take 1 or 2 of the fall, so we'll see. But this actually forgot to mention something is on the earlier side. Instead of papers right now, it's a lot of grant funding. Finding where I'm gonna get people to paint it. That's gonna average the first and second year. Yes.
If there's anything that our panel would like to. Anything else to say that you didn't really get a chance to say, any like little piece of advice that you have? Yeah,
Either on applying to grad school or on life as a grad student. Maintaining your sanity through it all.
it doesn't have to be like a big thing, it's like, what is your like. One. Like, this is my number 1 piece of advice.
I would say my advice is, when you're coming up with your list for grad schools, talk to someone, a professor at your school, someone who you know who's in a similar field, because they might know, where would be a good fit for you. Definitely get those applications started as early as you can. And then know the difference between a personal statement and a research statement. They're similar, they aren't the same.
I think what's more important than doing research you're interested in is working with an advisor in a group that you're happy working with. Even if you really love this idea of a certain topic, if you have a horrible group or a horrible advisor, you're just not gonna have a good life. And I think that's probably the number 1 reason, or at least number 2 of why people might drop out of the PhD program.
Yeah, I was actually gonna say that exact thing. So, yeah, talk to people. It's more about who you know than what you're doing. It's my opinion. But that's what that well. I think I might say like, work hard, but learn when to say no, when to take a step back, because if you work hard, you go far, but people expect more. So you have to learn to, kind of stand on their own and say, it's what I'm going to do, it's what I'm able to do, and this is what I'm not able to do. That's just general life advice, I guess, but it works pretty well for that school. Yeah, you gotta learn to not push yourself too far.
Great. Thank you to our panel for talking about yourselves for now. I'm gonna stop the recording now.